Good morning.
Good morning.
Nice to see you all and to be back up here in beautiful Payson with you. I'm Reverend Toni Corrigan, and so I'd like to share the meditation with you. Thank you, Don, for sharing about the daily word, because that is what we do. We take it in and make it personal. And when we hear other people's experiences, that helps us to bring that into our own life. Thank you. So let's just become quiet. We are quiet and calm already. And just let your body be relaxed. Be here in this space, in this moment, in this time. There's nothing we need to do. We can be here. And all of us know where we hold tension in our bodies. Some in our shoulders, some in our back, our hips. So consciously just bring your breath into that area of your body for a few breaths. And let those muscles go. Making ourselves open, receptive. As we move more deeply into that secret, silent space within us. That space where we know who we are. We are the very essence of God in expression. What a joyful thought. We're the essence of God. And so we breathe, knowing with every breath we're breathing in that essence, that life. Breathing in the life and breathing out any sense of limitation. Breathing in the love that we feel so strongly in this space, in this sacred sanctuary. Knowing that we are one with every person in the room. And as we grow together. Breathing in the love. Letting go of any sense of boundary between us. Breathing in joy. The joy of knowing the truth. The joy of the light. The joy of the love. The joy of this beautiful environment. And the joy of coming together to grow, to learn, to inspire one another, to touch, to feel. Joy is a deep feeling coming from the very center of our being. And breathing in the peace. The peace that knows that we are in divine mind, and that mind is our mind also, and we know the answer to every question. Centered in the mind of God, I know the answer. So I take time in the silence to listen. Whatever in your life at this moment might be coming up, just lay it out there in front of you. Knowing divine mind knows the answer. so we give thanks for this knowing that the next step is revealed to us in our spiritual growth and whatever we're doing in our physical manifestation in this world. We're guided and guarded step by step always. And this is true of the church. So I see this church being guided step by step to its greater growth, its perfect place, and continuing in the loving connections that are established here. So we release this prayer into the mind of God, knowing that it is done and it is so. Amen. As I said, I'm Reverend Toni Corrigan, and my title today is Jesus Christ Heals. Today. Because sometimes we forget that. I think that happened over 2,000 years ago. You know, the majority of prayer requests, and I'm sure many of you know this, for Silent Unity, any Unity church, any New Thought church, even any church probably, that accepts prayer requests is for healing. It may be physical body healing, it may be healing of an experience or a relationship. But of course the movement, the Unity movement, started with Myrtle Fillmore's healing, and Charles had healing also. And it was the heart of Jesus' ministry. And some of us, I'd say not many of us in this room, but many, many people look at Jesus and say, well, Yahweh, he was the Son of God. Yahweh, he was the exception. Yahweh, he did miracles. Well, the truth is, he was our teacher. And what did he say? These things shall you do, and even greater. Pretty big responsibility, isn't it? Does that mean that we can heal?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Well, let's look at some of the aspects of Jesus' healing ministry and see what he was teaching. Eric Butterworth, in his book, Discover the Power Within You, has a chapter called Jesus' Formula for Healing. So did he have a formula? H equals, I don't know. But Eric begins that chapter with this paradox. He said, while Jesus healed all manner of diseases and left some amazingly clear concepts by which we can follow him in the practice of healing by spiritual means, it's rare today to find a Christian church that stresses healing or even admits to its possibility. Now, Eric wrote this book a number of years ago. So we're saying, I see an evolution in many, many churches, even other churches besides New Thought churches, where they're moving towards this. So we're not going to just blame them for not doing it. But fully 1/3 of Jesus' ministry was devoted to healing. And we sometimes hear, well, you know, the age of miracles has passed. So we're going to see what beliefs we can find from his healing ministry. Butterworth said Jesus was not a magician. He simply fulfilled divine law on a higher level than anyone has before or since. I want you to remember that, those words, divine law. And that's even referred to in our daily word. Great peace have those who love your law. Nothing can make them stumble. So we're going to talk about that. Here it goes on to say the potential, or Charles Fillmore said, the potential for healing is in every person. And Jesus saw that divinity so clearly. He saw us as whole and complete. He saw the person who came to him for healing as perfect. And he could see that with such a laser beam of light and spiritual vision that the healing was instantaneous. So his healings were demonstrations of the law of life. When I came to Arizona 18 years ago, because my grandson is 18, so I always know how long I've been here, I attended Unity of Mesa. And once a year, they would invite the octogenarians up on the platform, all of the 80-year-old congregants. And they got to just give a little snippet about their spiritual journey, but also respond to this question: what do you love about Unity? And so I'd ask you to think for a moment, what do you love about Unity? Now, we don't have time for everybody to share now, but maybe during the potluck, you could share with someone. What brings you back Sunday after Sunday? Well, almost without exception, the answer was, to what do you love about Unity, was the law of mind action. The law of mind action. And we talk about positive thinking. We talk about thoughts held in mind, produce after they're come. But do we really understand how that law works? Jesus did. I think the reason that those folks responded that way is because the law of mind action puts the power where? Right here.
Right here.
Right here. The power is not in the disease. The power is not in the diagnosis. The power is not in the doctor or the hospital. The power is right here. And wouldn't you want to come back into a group where you hear that message? Jesus said, judge not according to appearances, but judge righteous judgment. So let's think of some of his healings. There was the blind man. He healed blindness more than once. The woman with the issue of blood. The man by the pool. One of my favorites is the centurion's daughter. And then, of course, the resurrecting of Lazarus. But not once did Jesus ask about symptoms or how you're feeling. He didn't give a diagnosis or a prognosis. He said things like, your faith has made you whole. Take up your bed and walk. And to Lazarus, he said, come forth. He would not have made those statements if he were not judging righteous judgment. He saw beyond the appearance, always. We have to have a single eye. And you know, in the Bible, it refers to if your eye is single, your whole body is full of light. And that means that we are looking beyond the appearance. Reverend Dr. Johnny Coleman said often, there's nothing to be healed, only the truth to be revealed. And she demonstrated that many, many times for years. Butterworth says there's that in you that's greater than your weakness, stronger than your fears. The four-dimensional creature that is whole even within your sickness. There is that of you that is the perfect idea of man in the mind of God. And we're just asleep to our greater self. And remember, Jesus said that about Lazarus. He's not dead. He's sleeping. And many of us go through a lot of our lives sleeping before we awake to the Christ of perfection within us. The leper said to Jesus, if thou wilt, thou can make me clean. And Jesus said, I will. Now, have you ever heard someone who has an illness or condition, they say, well, it's the will of God. It's the, you know, God's giving me this to make me stronger. God's will could not be sickness. Don't we say at the beginning of the service there's one presence and one power? One is indivisible. There cannot be God and sickness. There cannot be God and hate. God is all there is, and God is life. So if we have to convince our minds of that sometimes. And when we can, then we can move into that understanding of the law. When we hear someone say, oh, this is God's will, they just don't understand the nature of God. Butterworth talks about a healing shrine where many people had been healed. But each person there was given a little pamphlet and said, most of the people that come will not be healed because suffering is your business. Heaven sent you suffering to bring you closer to God. I just don't get that at all. What did Jesus know? You know, we're always saying, what did he know and when did he know it? What did Jesus know that supported him and made him a healer in the face of appearances? First, he knew God is one. And he knew God is life and wholeness. And Eric says, this is the evidence of man's divinity because he also knew and told us and taught us, you and I are one. We are one with that Christ. We are the Christ in expression. I love the wording that was given up to that affirmation. There's one presence and one power as the universe, as me, expressing in every moment when we're aware. Sometimes my mind just plays and does silly things. Did you ever see or hear anything from the scriptures about Jesus being sick? No. I mean, isn't that kind of a make you laugh? And I thought, he was in crowds all the time. Where were those Jews? But he never, ever, there's no reference to him ever being sick or tired. And this is not because he was unique. It was because he knew his divine perfection and that of every person. Many spiritual teachers, the Fillmores, early pioneers, Butterworth, talk about the fourth dimension. That perfection of humans is realized in the fourth dimension. And I was so excited when I read Saturday's Daily Word because it's talking about the fourth dimension, although it doesn't use those words. Beneath my random, everyday thoughts, an emerging power grows within me. I experience this inner presence, first as light, upliftment, and peace, and then as a deeper knowing. I touch a place of pure being beyond time and space and realize spirit and I are one. That dimension beyond time, space, and conditions is what we can refer to as the fourth dimension, where we can go through our minds into that place that is beyond time, space, and conditions. The woman, in this space, the fourth dimension is where we see that vision that Jesus always saw, that vision of perfection. And faith is the key to the fourth dimension, the bridge to the world of wholeness. So the woman who suffered for 19 years from an issue of blood knew that if she could just touch the hem of Jesus' garment, she would be whole. And so she made her way through the crowd and was able to reach out and touch. And Jesus felt that. He felt that power move through him. And he turned to see who touched him. And what did he say? He
Your
said,
faith has made you.
faith has made thee whole. Absolutely. It's not just a hope that God's going to heal you, but the intuitive sense of knowing that you are whole. You are whole and perfect within your being because you're God's stuff. You are made of God's stuff and it's perfect. Jesus recognized that level of faith in the woman and affirmed it. The other thing that my mind was playing with this week is, what did Jesus do when he went to the mountains and the desert for 40 days? You know, we say he prayed, but 40 days, that's a long time. Now, if your mind is anything like mine, in 40 minutes, it's been jumping around like a monkey. So what do you think he did in that 40 days? In the early days of New Thought, and still in religious science, they talk about spiritual mind treatment. And how many of you know spiritual mind treatment? Some of you. Okay. It's what we call affirmative prayer. But I like that term because it really defines what we're doing to work the law, to let the law work through us. And by treating our mind, because that's where all the stuff goes on in our minds. That's where the fears pop up, that's where the doubts pop up. And don't tell me that Jesus spent 40 days in the desert and didn't have a few thoughts that popped up. And so what we call affirmative prayer, and religious science calls spiritual mind treatment, and Emma Curtis Hopkins also did, use this to treat our minds, to bring our thoughts into understanding of that perfection and that law. Many of us meditate and study spiritual teachings, but do we take the time to really treat our minds, to bring our minds into accord with the truth? Because we make it quiet and feel peaceful and calm for 10 minutes, and then we get up and we go into the house, the other part of the house, or we're fixing dinner, or we're interacting with the family, and those thoughts get overlaid with some others that are not what we want to plant in our mind. Thoughts planted consciously in our minds take root and grow into demonstrations in our physical form. Our subconscious mind is the soil in which they're nurtured, in which they grow. Now, there's only one mind, but it operates on 3 different levels. The superconscious is what we call the cosmic mind, the divine mind, and then we have the subconscious mind, and then we have the mind in our form. So what we want to do is plant seeds. What do you want to plant? If you plant apples, what are you going to get? Apples. You plant onions, you're going to get onions. Now the other tricky part is there is one mind. So our subconscious mind is also connected with the subconscious mind of the whole world. There is a race consciousness. And boy, there are a lot of weed seed thoughts. Weed seed thoughts flying around in that consciousness. So sometimes, things will pop up in our physical world, and we'll say, well, I wasn't thinking about that. But that thought may have floated in from somewhere and taken root. So what we want to do is be conscious and do some weeding if necessary, and just plant the thoughts that we want to manifest in our lives. And that's why Fillmore particularly uses denials. So we deny that there is power outside of ourselves. We deny that this condition has power over me. But then we have to plant those thoughts that we want to manifest. And that's what spiritual mind treatment does. And so we're going to, I'm not taking too long. Okay, Donna and Donna are going to pass out a little paper for you. The steps in spiritual mind treatment. I was a school teacher for 35 years, so that's why I didn't pass these out at the beginning.
Yes.
I know what you're doing.
Yes. You are a wise teacher.
Skip ahead.
So let's just look at these steps. This is really a compilation of Fillmore's steps and these Ernest Holmes, the founder of Science of Mind. So the first step, when we sit down and we have relaxed, the first step is what we did this morning. We relaxed. Let go of the tension, let go of the angst, the worry. And then we acknowledge or recognize the presence. There's one life. That life is God life. God is perfect life. God is strength, vitality, and energy. God is harmony and order. God is wholeness. Now, this particular treatment is centered on healing, but you can use this for whatever you're going to bring forth in your life. And these are just words that I put down here. You have your own words. But sometimes when you're starting something, it helps to have someone give you some words. Like training wheels. What we're recognizing, and what you recognize every Sunday, there is one presence and one power. As the universe, expressing as the universe is you. And so the second step, identification or identification, reminds us that it is expressing as you, as me. God-like expresses through me now. I am perfect life, strength, vitality, and energy flow through me now. This is the unification, that there is no separation between me and this perfection. And realization. In this step, we feed our mind powerful present tense affirmation. The perfect life of God is expressing through my body now. I am perfect in spirit, mind, and body. And this is where you create your own affirmation that really feels right for you. Fillmore said in Revealing Word, realization is that deep inner conviction and assurance of the fulfillment of an ideal. It means at one-ment, completion, wholeness. It's the dawning of truth in the consciousness. And so you have your own affirmations. Every cell of my body is radiantly alive with God. Every organ, every system, every function of my body is expressing perfectly your own affirmations. Now, as I said, Fillmore uses denials also. So if your mind is having a hard time getting around this perfection, then you may want to use a denial. There is no absence of life or holiness. Can't be. Can't be. There's no power in test results or appearances. Then go back. If you use denials, go back to the powerful affirmations. Meditation. Take one of your affirmations that really resonates with you and repeat it silently to yourself. Your body's relaxed, and that begins to move throughout your body. It begins to vibrate throughout every cell as you repeat it and meditate on that idea, and then you're ready to take it into the silence. And it's still vibrating through you in the silence. And then thanksgiving and release. I'm filled with gratitude for the truth of my wholeness. I praise the life moving through every cell. I give thanks that my words and thoughts are now manifesting. This is the law, folks. It's the law. And I'm so thankful for the perfect working of the divine law of mind action, just as those folks in Mesa were expressing. Then, when we plant a seed, and we don't keep digging it up, I release these words into the law of the mind, knowing it is done and is so. And so, this is something that we would like to play with and work with.